Welcome to the Divine Program, Episode 4. Today, we are addressing one of the most profound and challenging subjects faced by believers and unbelievers alike, the permission of evil. Nothing has done more to foster doubt in a loving Creator than the undeniable persistency of evil, pain, and sorrow in our world. When thinking minds observe sin and suffering, they require a rational solution from God's Word to avoid having their faith stifled. The Bible alone provides the true philosophy behind why a perfect Creator would permit a flawed world. Today, we will look to God's Word for the only rational, logical solution to this great mystery and discover exactly why a perfect Creator permits a flawed world. Skeptics look at the world and struggle to reconcile it with an all-wise, just, loving, and powerful God. They argue that if God were truly just, He would not allow children to inherit parental depravity and then hold them accountable. They question His power and love, wondering why a groaning creation, Romans 8:22, is permitted to continue in such a state. Let us first examine the skeptic's dilemma. The best minds among us naturally idealize the Creator as the very embodiment of wisdom, justice, love, and power. But when they look out upon the world, they see what the Apostle Paul perfectly described in Romans 8:22 as a groaning creation. They ask perfectly logical questions. If God is just, why does a child inherit the weaknesses of its parents, only to be held accountable for them? Is He not powerful enough to stop the suffering? Or is He simply not loving enough to care? These are fair questions that deserve a thorough scriptural answer. The truth of the matter is actually wonderfully counterintuitive. It is not a lack of power or love that allows suffering. Rather, it is because of the absolute perfection of our Creator's character that He permits evil in the world. God could have easily used His power to create beings that were shielded from all temptation and forced to be continually obedient. But God did not want robotic creations. A robotic creation cannot voluntarily love. As Jesus told the woman at the well, the Father seeks such to worship Him as worship Him in spirit and in truth. He desires a voluntary love that emulates His own perfect attributes. And that requires genuine freedom. When God created human beings, He endowed them with moral qualities and reasoning faculties, creating them in His own image. As Psalm 8 verse 5 declares, we were made a little lower than the angels. To be made in God's image means to be a free moral agent, possessing the liberty to do right or to do wrong. If God is a free moral agent and we are made in His likeness, we must have the liberty to obey or disobey. But understand this, true liberty is a dangerous gift. It carries the inherent risk that a creature might fall into an error of judgment or personal ambition, stepping out of harmony with the divine government. This inherent risk of liberty became a tragic reality, first in the angelic realm. The scriptures identify Satan as the very first rebel. Originally, he was a glorious and beautiful, known as a covering cherub, and a glorious morning star, named Lucifer. But a dark ambition took root in his heart. He desired to ascend above the other angels and establish a separate empire, a jurisdiction completely apart from the Creator. For a long time, this ambition lay dormant, waiting for the perfect opportunity to manifest itself. That opportunity arrived with the creation of our first parents. In Adam and Eve, Satan beheld a new order of creatures, possessing the unique power to propagate their own species. He reasoned that if he could deceive them, he could rule over an entire race. So he laid a trap in Eden. He approached Mother Eve, portraying the Creator as a tyrant who was selfishly keeping them in ignorance. He offered her wisdom, while blatantly denying the penalty of sin. The serpent spoke the great lie, "Ye shall not surely die," calling God a falsifier. Eve believed the lie, and Adam, seeing her condemned,
willingly ate the fruit so he could die with his beloved spouse.
The verdict from the Almighty was completely just. Dying, thou shalt die. As the prophet Ezekiel declares in chapter 18, verse 4, "The soul that sinneth, it shall die." Notice that the penalty was not immediate extermination, but a gradual process of decay and loss of life. Death took hold of our race immediately, and within that 1,000-year day, the dying was consummated. As a result of this catastrophe, an estimated 20 billion of Adam's descendants have suffered a slow decay, going down into the grave, which is the biblical hell, or Sheol. You might wonder why God didn't just immediately destroy Satan. By permitting Satan to seemingly thwart the divine purpose in Eden, and by allowing him to live untrammeled, God presented a massive test to the entire angelic host. Satan's continued existence suggested to the watching angels that God might actually lack the power to punish him. God permitted this reign of sin to prove and manifest the true loyalty of every angel. It forced them to choose. Would they be drawn away by the pleasures of sin, or would they remain completely loyal to their Creator? The climax of this angelic test occurred during the days of Noah. Angels were granted the power of materialization, allowing them to appear as men and interact with humanity. Emboldened by Satan's unpunished rebellion, many angels chose to abandon their spiritual plane. We read in Genesis 6, 2-4, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives. These fallen angels left their own habitation and produced a hybrid race of giants known as the Nephilim. Because of this tremendous breach, the earth became utterly filled with violence. This selfish ambition threatened to completely wipe out the true human race. But God's program cannot be frustrated. He brought the Great Flood, which destroyed the hybrid progeny and saved the true human family from extinction. Noah was preserved because he was perfect in his generation, meaning his family line was not contaminated by this improper angelic intercourse. As for the disobedient angels, Jude 6 and 2 Peter 2:4 tell us that God cast them down to Tartarus, restraining them in chains of darkness. They are no longer permitted to materialize in the light, but are restrained, awaiting their final judgment. Since the deluge, our world has continued to groan under a reign of sin and death. But we face an additional challenge. As the Apostle Paul warns us in Ephesians 6:12, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with wicked spirits in influential positions. Satan and his fallen angels constantly seek to misrepresent God as vindictive and unloving. God permits this darkness to prove the loyalties of his people. We are required to walk by faith, not by sight, holding on to God's promises, even when evil seems to be winning the day. More than 4,000 years after the tragic fall in Eden, the beautiful remedy arrived. God sent forth his Son to be man's redeemer, to recover everything that was lost. To outward appearances, it seemed God's plan was failing, because Jesus did not appear in regal, heavenly splendor. Instead, he came as a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. He suffered and died as a malefactor on the cross to pay the exact ransom penalty that Father Adam had incurred. In this incredible sacrifice, the heights and depths of divine love were manifested to a degree the universe had never previously understood. But why the delay? Why didn't Jesus immediately fix the world? It is because God is currently performing a hidden work. As the poet wrote, "The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower." During this present age, God is carefully selecting a little flock from amongst redeemed humanity. He is inviting them to share in the coming kingdom work of blessing all the families of the earth. The ongoing permission of evil allows for the testing and selection of these faithful individuals who are willing to follow the Master's footsteps through suffering and opposition. When we look at this entire program, we see that the permission of evil acts like a brilliant prism. Just as a prism breaks white light into a beautiful spectrum of colors, the permission of evil has allowed the perfection of the divine character to be fully displayed. Without the existence of evil, neither angels nor men would ever truly know the unbending justice of God, seen in the ransom sacrifice. We would not know the profound love of God manifested at the cross. We would not comprehend his magnificent wisdom in designing this great plan, nor his awe-inspiring power that will ultimately be displayed in the resurrection of the dead. And this brings us to the grand outcome of the divine program. The bitter lessons learned by our race regarding the exceeding sinfulness of sin will ultimately prove to be incredibly valuable and educational for all eternity. In the end, all who refuse to come into heart harmony with God's righteousness will be utterly destroyed, meaning evil will be wiped out forever. Only the good will remain. Then, as the architect's magnificent plan is completed, every single creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth will be heard praising him that sits on the throne and the Lamb forever and ever. May God bless your continued study of his glorious truth. Thank you for watching. Would you like to know more? Like and subscribe. And may God bless you.